Let's get started. Tonight we have our fourth Litigation Awards dinner. We bring together this outstanding audience and two fine honorees to form a welcoming community. We offer you what Mark Steinberg and the Beverly Hills Bar does best: spectacular food. I'm Jonathan Stein. As chair for all four Litigation Awards dinners, I welcome you with great pride to this sold-out dinner. We have begun to establish a core of great award alumni, from retired Chief Justice Ron George to presiding Justice Norm Epstein, who's here tonight, and U.S. District Court Judge Christina Snyder. You'll see her later as well. So we have honored some of the country's most noted litigators, from Roman Silberfeld to Tom Girardi and Marshall Grossman. This year, we honor two men who have fought for the little guy, ensuring that the judicial branch serves those most in need. Judge Michael Nash has brought humanity and efficiency to the largest juvenile court system in the country. Brown Green has won over 100 trial verdicts, over $1 million, many involving catastrophic injuries. Political movements and social discourse are full of theories about how to do good, from strengthening the middle class, making the government more efficient, or making our homes safer. But after politicians have kissed enough babies, after news broadcasters have sold enough soap suds, and after prisons have been filled to capacity with convicts, there are two social truths that defy rhetoric or blandishment. First, every year, year in and year out, an enormous river of abused, unwanted, or wayward children floods the juvenile courts. These are kids from homes so bad that being a ward of the state might be a step up. These are youthful offenders who embark either upon a life of crime or a path towards overcoming a difficult past. How to help and empower kids whose lives hang so precariously? That's a tough one. That's a tough one. And should you succeed in several thousand cases filed in 2014, know that as night follows day, 2015 will bring several thousand more. And second, every year, year in and year out, perfectly good people have unspeakable things happen to them. They get into a car, a truck, a boat for an ordinary trip. They go out for a sports team, to a fraternity party, or some other happy pursuit. They take a pill that's supposed to help you, or use a consumer product that's part of everyday life. And without warning, without any expectation, an impossibly bad event costs them a happy life, their ability to walk, or foreshortens the long life that we all hope for. These are two inescapable adjuncts to our civilized and prosperous way of life. These are two ugly realities in Southern California, where the sun is always supposed to shine. Innocent children do not have a home to grow up in. People get into horrific accidents or use broadly distributed products that ruin their lives. No matter how much politicians urge the legislature, no matter how many fixes are implemented by the executive branch, it is the judiciary and the officers of the court where the buck stops, case by case, and year in and year out. Well, we honor two men tonight who have spent their lifetime fighting for the little guy, fighting to clear out jungles of despair and till fields where humanity may flourish and values that we all share may grow. Judge Michael Nash has brought humanity and efficiency to the largest juvenile court system in the country. With consistent reform efforts, he has brought down the number of kids under supervision of the Los Angeles juvenile courts from 65,000 kids in the 1990s to under 28,000 kids this year. And of course, you know, the LA clock. And of course, we all know that was in the face of 20% increase in population. He reduced the backlog of foster children waiting for adoption from 6,000 kids in 1998 to under 1,500 this year. He started Adoption Saturday, where over 10,000 foster children had their adoptions completed on Saturday, when low-income parents don't have to miss work holding the courts open to do so. The program has gone nationwide as National Adoption Day. Brown Green began in 1973 with 8 cases and sleeping in his car. Brown has combined famous political deals, such as the napkin deal, bringing a much-needed compromise to tort reform, or the $3.3 billion tobacco settlement for Los Angeles County. He's combined that with a 41-year string of jury victories. The most recent was in December, with a $7 million verdict in San Diego, a town not known for large verdicts. Along the way, Brown has mentored 2 generations of trial lawyers. Green, Burlett, and Wheeler has produced more consumer attorneys, presidents, and more trial lawyers of the year than any other firm. Besides our extraordinary honorees, we have a wonderful slate of presenters. Our honorary dinner chair is California Speaker and San Francisco Mayor Willie Brown. You'll see him next. For Judge Nash, we have Los Angeles Superior Court Presiding Judge David Wesley, whose disciplined administrative reforms are reshaping the nation's largest trial court system, and Commissioner Jacqueline Lewis, recently recognized by the Juvenile Court Judges of California as Judge of the Year. Presenting Judge Nash for the George Award for Judicial Excellence will be last year's august recipient, U.S. District Court Judge Christina Schneider. For Brown's introductions, we have LA County Supervisor Zev Yarlzletsky, representing 2 million people for the past 20 years. Bruce Burlett is a renowned business litigator who joined Brown to build Green, Burlett, and Wheeler into a firm that takes on the toughest cases against the most powerful adversaries. The Excellence in Advocacy Award will be presented by last year's recipient, the remarkable Marshall Grossman of Orrick, Harrington, and Sutcliffe. But it is you and our remarkable audience of leading litigators and judges whom I must thank for joining us tonight. In 4 short years, we have created a recognized forum where excellence is rewarded and friendships are renewed. That ain't bad. For 83 years, Beverly Hills Bar has been recognized for the caliber and prowess of its attorneys, now 6,000 strong and growing. And that ain't bad either. You add to our brilliance of this evening with your own presence, your enthusiasm, and your excellence. We thank Beverly Hills Bar President Diane Cartman, CEO Mark Steinberg, their dedicated staff for a stylish dinner, as well as many generous sponsors for their financial help with this memorable evening. And of course, thank you to our previous honorees for their vital input into tonight's awards. Now, I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our honorary chair, poor Willie Brown. Poor Willie Brown. He's been famous for so long that nobody bothers to tell you what he actually got done. So I asked this guy, him, just pick 3 things that you did as Speaker of the Assembly, just 3 things you did as Mayor of San Fran. 3 out of hundreds. 1, divestment from California's huge investment funds of South African stocks and bonds. Remember how dramatically that increased the pressure leading to Nelson Mandela's freedom and to the end of apartheid. That was Willie. 2, gun control and weapons bans. California was the very first state to so enact in the 1980s. And that was Willie too. 3, leveraging his powerful position as Speaker to radically improve the quality of appointees to the California judiciary. Willie Brown and Governors Jerry Brown and George Deukmejian did great work there. Now, as Mayor of San Francisco, 1, the baseball stadium got built. Not just talked about, not just planned, not just sent to San Jose, but built in San Francisco. Plus, an entire neighborhood was added to the city, and a transportation center was designed for the stadium and the neighborhood. All were built to successfully integrate the ballpark with the neighborhood with the city, the transportation system with the region, and all came off enormously successful. 2, Mission Bay Stem Cell Center. In the face of a federal ban on stem cell research and a nationwide debate, Willie got the center up and running along and located in San Francisco. And we have only begun to see the very beginning of how stem cells can rehabilitate spinal injuries or bring sight to the blind. And 3, Willie built 15,000 units of affordable housing. Now let's put that in context. San Francisco's got like 750,000 people. That breaks down into like maybe 250,000 households. He built 15,000 affordable housing units so that the working poor in San Francisco can live in coexistence with this gentrification, and in part thanks to a $400 million bond, a measure that he put through. Ladies and gentlemen, you don't need to read his columns in the San Francisco Chronicle, and you don't need to see him on TV at MSNBC. But you should support the Willie Brown Institute on Politics and Public Service, which places interns in local government up north. Please welcome the one, and please welcome the only, Willie Brown.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I must tell you that I got a call, 3 or 4 months ago, telling me about this event and that you would be honoring Brown Green. I was, of course, instantly in a position of saying, I will accept anytime you want to honor Brown Green. Because when I served as Speaker of the House in the early 1980, 1995, I was the beneficiary of an incredible collection of consumer lawyers. And Brown Green was, for me, maybe the prototype of what consumer lawyers should really be. He was a strong advocate for equal opportunity and equal justice and equal application of the resources. He was a strong, committed individual for supporting the kind of candidates that I needed to support so I could keep my job. So the combination of the two was a perfect marriage. But it didn't start out that way because, being a person of color, and when somebody told me that I want you to meet Brown Green, what's the natural reaction to some cat named Brown Green? It's got to be that he's a Baptist. He went to a segregated school. He came up the hard way, and he had to be a brother. And then this tall, lanky white boy walked into my office and said he was Brown Green. And I, of course, said, "What's your real name?" I was obviously very impressed with his presentation to me and the outline of more than 100 victories worth $1 million or more, or multiple figures that have just been described. All of that demonstrates who this man really is and what he is and has been capable of doing. My membership, however, had some trouble with adjusting to Brown because he is not a diplomat at all. He does not suffer fools easily, and many people who are elected to public office are there because they are fools, and he doesn't suffer them. He was sometimes indignant with their absence of an understanding of what the circumstances were and why they should be doing what they need to do. But he did have an extraordinary vision of how to help settle almost everything. And I'm sorry that Bill Lockyer isn't here tonight as part of the presentation for Brown Green, because Bill Lockyer was very much a part of the whole process that allowed the talent of Brown Green to benefit the state of California. I just think back, if Brown Green, who was just starting out when micro was put in place in the middle 70s, if Brown Green had been the president of the then called Trial Lawyers of California, if Brown Green had been on the board of directors, if Brown Green had been a part of any of the representation that lawyers had, he would have guided, I think, the various bar associations and the individuals who were involved in that effort. He never would have allowed them to have said that the way to defeat it is make sure there's no cola in the cap. He would have said that. He was just that smart. And that's why when something you probably get indicted for now, the napkin agreement, you can't do that anymore. That, you'd have the LA Times raising unholy hell, you'd have the Chronicle and the Bee and everybody else in the world. But in those days, we really did have a good time doing things that needed to be done without the spotlight. And that was one of the things that needed to be done because people weren't crazy about tort reform. And it really wasn't tort reform they were after. They were after an advantage in a system that already gave them an advantage where people had been injured or people had been in some manner or another or dealt with adversely. They wanted more. And they were in a position where with the clout that they had in the world of money, with the clout they had in the world of alleged acceptability, with the clout that they had as it relates to PR, they could hold sway. The negotiated settlement over red wine, steak, and brandy fried chicken, and all the other things in Frank Fat's restaurant became the cornerstone of what the justice system can provide people with today who've been, in one manner or another, harshly dealt with by some individual or some corporation or some collection thereof. And Brown Green, Bill Lockyer, and a few other people helped orchestrate that solution. And it was not done on the floor of the legislature. It was adopted on the floor of the legislature, but the contents of it was written primarily by non-legislators led by Brown Green. And so when you honor this extraordinary person, you're joining a whole collection of people. Because you see, when people start telling me about Brown Green after I got over the name, they start telling me about all the honors that he had received. And I'm amazed that you just got around to honoring him. He's had every goddamn honor there is. As a lawyer, he's been in every category you can think of. He has literally been at the pinnacle of success in demonstrating his skill and ability. I'm pleased that the Beverly Hills Bar just caught up. Congratulations, my friend, Brown Green.
Okay, let me introduce Beverly Hills Bar President Diane Cartman. She's one of the premier legal ethics experts in California. Diane has advised many in tonight's audience on ethical duties in the midst of heated litigation, as well as national law firms with sensitive issues involved in advertising and multi-jurisdictional practice. You've probably read her long-running ethics column in the California Bar Journal, and of course Diane has a long track record of good results before the State Bar Court. Please welcome our pride and joy, Beverly Hills Bar President Diane Cartman.
Hello to all of you, and first I want to thank Jonathan for yet once again putting on a fabulous event with his committee, litigation committee. It's remarkable that he does this year after year, and I'm very grateful. I want to add my congratulations to the recipients of our extraordinary rewards. Judge Michael Nash, he has toiled tirelessly to improve the lives and conditions of juveniles in our society. Listen, Judge Nash, there are not many gold medals given for what you do. And I get that. And so I'd like you to consider this to be a gold medal, like a Lifetime Achievement Award, because I understand you might be soon leaving the bench. And I'm grateful, and all these people are grateful for the extraordinary changes you've made in the conditions of juveniles in our society, because nobody else cared, and you did. And that's really remarkable. And Brown, I've known Brown forever. And I remember when I was a little baby lawyer in the 80s, and everyone would go downstairs on Hill Street to Superior Court and see Brown lift up the automobiles he would raise into the courtrooms. This was like a major event. Brown had the guts to go forward for the clients he represented. He represented plaintiffs who had no other advocate, just like Judge Nash represented the vulnerable. Brown also represented the vulnerable who had no voice in what they were doing. He took the cases that were unwinnable. The cases that no one could win, he would take, and he would take them all the way to the end and achieve great victories for those people. I've got to go to my next page. I actually have written remarks here. I want to also commend our Bar Association. This is our 82nd year of being, in my opinion, the best bar association in the state of California. You know, we were formed 82 years ago because other, more traditional bar associations, read i.e. the big ones, would not accept our minorities, our young people, or women. Really, give me a break on that one. How could they not accept women as members of their association? So, because of that, the experience of being rejected, being inclusive is one of our core values in this association. And so I'm so very proud that this year we had an amicus brief at the Supreme Court of the United States of America involving marriage equality, which I know you all support. And because that is one of our core values, I know that we will also pick up any challenge that has to deal with civil rights and issues of that kind, because that's who we are. If you're here joining us tonight, that's what we stand for. And the Beverly Hills Bar Association has always been concerned with the most vulnerable in our society. And that's why we support Judge Nash 100%. And that's why we support Brown also, because Brown's always out there with people that are maimed or dead or can't support themselves. And it's an honor to have an opportunity to honor these two people. I mean, I don't think it could get much better. And I have to, all volunteer organizations are able to have these kinds of events because of our staff. And we are so blessed that we have the best staff in the nation. They make me and all of my colleagues look wonderful because they put on these events. We really don't do these events. They do it for us, and then we get to stand up here like I do and say, oh, wow, whatever. But it's really all because of our staff, and we're so fortunate that our staff is led by the best, most dedicated and devoted of the bar executives in the nation. I've been to BLI and all these other national events. We're so fortunate, and I want to introduce at this time Mark Steinberg, who is our CEO, and wow, it doesn't get much better. Thank you so much for giving me a chance to talk with you.
Feels like I'm being honored tonight. Thank you, Diane, and thank you, Jonathan Stein, and your terrific litigation section, and the dinner committee for this evening's event. Thank you, Mayor Willie Brown, for honoring us with your participation. We are delighted that you are all here to help the Beverly Hills Bar Association present its 4th Litigation Awards dinner honoring Los Angeles Superior Court Judge Michael Nash and renowned trial attorney Brown Green. We want to thank our honorees' family members, friends, firms, colleagues, and our distinguished guests for helping to make this evening so special. As you've heard, the Beverly Hills Bar Association is very proud of our over 82 years and well-recognized history of activism and accomplishments, serving our members, leading our profession, and advocating for justice in our community. I must share with you that we are still basking in the glow of our 80th anniversary when we built out and moved into our new bar center located just literally a couple of steps away in the Rolex building on Wilshire and Cannon. Everyone who has visited, attended a program or a meeting, is pleased and proud of our new home and facilities, and if you haven't been to see it, this is your invitation to do so. Just call me, come on over. Finally, as has already been said, these productions don't happen by themselves. So in addition to the fine work of our Litigation Awards Dinner Committee, it is with deep appreciation and much affection that I acknowledge the hard work and dedication of our amazing and incredible Beverly Hills Bar Association staff. Please join me. We're off to a wonderful start, and a wonderful program along with the presentation of the awards awaits us, and dinner has already begun. But first, I want to thank the entire team here at the Montage, catering manager Sean Braun, chef Thomas Morton, and pastry chef Julie Jangali, with whom I have met on numerous occasions. The only thing I didn't do was go into the kitchen and help prepare the meal. I invite you to continue enjoying a delicious dinner. Thank you all very much.
So enjoy your dessert, get comfy, and we will continue with our theme of standing up for the little guy with a bevy of star presenters. All are distinguished, and happily for us, all are succinct speakers. For Judge Nash, we have LA Superior Court Presiding Judge David Wesley and Commissioner Jacqueline Lewis. Presenting Judge Nash with the George Award will be U.S. District Court Judge Christina Snyder. For Brown's introductions, we have Los Angeles County Supervisor Zeb Yaroslavsky and Brown's partner for 37 years, Bruce Broylette. 37 years, they must have formed their legal partnership in third grade. The Excellence in Advocacy Award will be presented by Marshall Grossman. Let me introduce our first speaker, Los Angeles Superior Court Commissioner Jacqueline Lewis. Her entire career as an attorney, referee, and now commissioner has been in the dependency court system. She earned her reputation as an expert in dependency law, serving as a juvenile court referee for 11 years. And then with the appointment to the Los Angeles Superior Court Commissioner in 2008. She's received the 2010 Judge of the Year Award from the Juvenile Court Judges of California, a graduate of UC Berkeley Bolt Hall School of Law. Commissioner Lewis is highly regarded for her exceptional ability to motivate foster children in the dependency court system. They have to rise above some pretty hard circumstances. She is a candidate for the Los Angeles Juvenile Court Judgeship on the June 3rd primary ballot. Please welcome Jackie Lewis.
Good evening. I thought a lot about what I wanted to say to you tonight about the honoree Judge Michael Nash. I could talk forever about his list of accomplishments as the longest acting presiding judge of the juvenile court on record. I could praise his innovations, his programs, his leadership. His accomplishments alone could take the next half hour. But I decided that I wanted to share with you a little bit of a different side of Michael Nash. I wanted to tell you a little about the man who has been able to do the things that he has done. You know, when I started out as a young lawyer pup, I knew very little about who was who and what role they played in the system as a whole. I don't think I knew who Ron George was, or even that he was the Chief Justice of the California Supreme Court, or what that role was in our court life. Luckily, I'm not that naive anymore. But it's an interesting backdrop to the story that I want to tell you. What I want to share with you is the first story that I ever heard about Ron George. The story was told by the Honorable Michael Nash and reflects just how personal getting this particular award is to him. Michael Nash was one of the 2 attorney generals to try the longest criminal trial ever to result in a conviction. He tried the Hillside Stranglers in the early 1980s. At that time, the Honorable Ron George was not the Chief Justice of the California Supreme Court. He was a trial judge in the Los Angeles County Superior Court. Without going into too much detail, let's just say that the Hillside Strangler case was very complicated and very convoluted. So complicated and convoluted, in fact, that after working with the case for a period of time, the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office was hesitant to prosecute the case, believing that it would be difficult to win a conviction. The result would have allowed 2 serial killers to walk free, to murder again, and to allow the lives of 10 women and young girls to go unanswered. When the district attorney informed the trial judge of their decision to drop the charges, the trial judge did something unprecedented. He asked the Attorney General's office to step in and try the case. To say the least, that request caused surprise, anger, and dissension. But this single act of judicial courage resulted in closure for 10 families and justice for those victims. It resulted in saving the lives of other young women whose lives would have been cut short had that trial judge not stood up for and done what was right versus what was expected, accepted, and even encouraged. When Mike Nash told me that story so many years later, I could still hear the respect in his voice when he spoke about Ron George and that decision. I don't believe that I have spoken to Judge Nash about that since the day so many years ago, but it has stuck with me. It stuck with me because I realized over the ensuing years that judicial courage is not common, it is not popular, and it is not fun. During the course of that 2-year trial, Michael Nash showed persistence, dedication, and hard work. He told me that how after a grueling day at trial, he would come home and want to work out a little. He would fall asleep on the bench press, reading the dailies of that trial. He lived and breathed that case for 2 years and finally got his man, or men. Again, I don't think that when I first heard that story, I understood how I would come to feel about those particular personality traits of his. The man hasn't changed very much over the years. He took with him to the bench all those same personality traits. In addition to that, he added the trait he so admired in Ron George, judicial courage. I have known Judge Michael Nash for 23 years, first as an attorney in his courtroom, and then as a judicial officer working for him. Over the years, he's been my nemesis, my boss, my mentor, my supporter, my biggest pain in the behind, and my dearest friend. I have seen many sides of the man. I got my first job out of law school as an attorney assigned to his courtroom. I got a call on a Friday asking me to interview that day. Apparently, as I found out later, they were desperate because the county counsel I ended up replacing had run out of his courtroom in tears that morning, swearing never to return. My entire interview revolved around questions about how I could and would deal with a demanding and sometimes ill-tempered judge on the bench. When I came to work my first day, someone had left the Daily Journal article with the name Monster Nash under his picture on my chair. It was an article about the hard-hitting, short-tempered judge who had cleaned up the Hollywood courts with a heavy hand. I was pretty terrified the first time I appeared in front of him, and it wasn't long before I was the recipient of his sharp tongue. But I have to tell you something. 23 years later, there is no one in my life that I admire or respect more than this man. Being a judge is really hard work. You need intelligence and dedication. You need to be able to manage a calendar. You need to find a way to give people justice. And it is true that justice delayed is justice denied. You need to be able to know what you're doing and do it right and unendingly, day after day. Judge Michael Nash has dedicated the overwhelmingly majority of his career to the children's and family in Los Angeles. He accepted a trial court position in the Juvenile Dependency Court almost 25 years ago. He knew nothing about the area of law, but with the same characteristics he showed during his Hillside Strangler days, he soon became not only the expert, but the face of juvenile dependency in Los Angeles and across the nation. I do not believe that there is a single person to have given more to the abused and neglected children in Los Angeles and even nationwide. His list of accomplishments is too long to go into and probably wouldn't mean much to those of you outside of the system. Suffice it to say that as he approaches his retirement, he can know that the system is much better off for his passing through it, and that he has given justice to so many in his trial court days and in his last 10 years as presiding judge of the juvenile court, by the judicial officers he has trained and mentors, the changes he has made to make the system work better. He will never truly know all of the ripples he has caused by his jumping into the pond. A judge in New York once asked me how he had accomplished here all of the things that he had accomplished. My reply, by sheer force of his personality. I didn't lie. He has refused to take no for an answer when he knew what was best for the system. Over the years, I have seen him grow in the ways he has gotten to yes. He has transformed from one who sometimes accomplished what he needed to by force to one who tries to build trust and consensus. He never acts selfishly, and he always acts with judicial courage. He fights for what is right and what is best for the system and the people in it with a passion and a dedication that is unparalleled. Michael Nash, I will never forget the way that you would talk about Ron George, the awe in your voice. However, if you have forgotten, you might want to listen to the awe in my voice when I talk about you. I would like to next introduce somebody that really needs no introduction to most, the Honorable David Wesley. He is the presiding judge of Los Angeles County. He has led this court through one of the roughest times ever to have happened on the court with budgetary issues. He has helped reestablish morale and funding. And if you want to talk about somebody whose passion Judge Nash's passion has caused a few gray hairs for, I'm sure Judge Wesley will tell you a little bit about it.
Well, good evening, everybody. I am here tonight also to have the distinct honor and privilege to introduce to you the Beverly Hills Bar Association's selection for the Ronald M. George Award for Judicial Excellence, Judge Michael Nash. This is a big deal for a judge to get be honored by the lawyers and the judges for the work that he or she does. It's a very special night. I have to tell you that Judge Michael Nash doesn't brag about himself. He is not a fancy dresser, although you look pretty good tonight, Mike. He does not carry a fancy briefcase. He is most simply described as a judge that is passionate about his work. But what makes Judge Michael Nash so special that he's being recognized tonight? A lot of judges care about what they do. How does a lawyer go from a hard-charging prosecutor on the Hillside Strangler case to being called Monster Nash, the nastiest judge in the Hollywood Municipal Court? To being the recipient of the 2013 Angel of Peace Award? What makes a leader in Congress rise on July 13, 2012, to describe Mike as an extraordinarily innovative leader who continues to improve the outcomes for abused children and families throughout the nation? Or to be described by another well-known juvenile judge expert with the words, "This is not a judge that should get ordinary accolades. This is a judge out of the box." Is this the same Michael Nash that when deftly cross-examining Kenneth Bianchi's friend, defense witness Veronica, in the Hillside Strangler case that you heard about, fiercely inquired about her plans to open a mortuary with serial killer Douglas Clark, the Sunset Slayer, so they could both enjoy sex with the dead, and got her to admit that she was seriously considering it? What makes Michael so special? So I did some research. I asked around. I asked his wife, Patty. I spoke to his friend and co-counsel on the Hillside Strangler case, Justice Roger Bourne. I read about his many accomplishments, and as Jackie said, there are so many. And this is what I discovered. First, Mike Nash grew up in New York City, in fact in Manhattan. So right away you might think that you understand now, spending the first 12 years of your life in that environment, Manhattan, before moving to Los Angeles, his California mellowing took a little while. And that's why he's so tough. You might think that, but you would be wrong. I don't think that his courage or toughness or what makes him special came from playing football at Fairfax High School. Was it something in college or law school that changed him years later? I looked. Mike graduated from UCLA in 1970 with a BA in political science, then went to Loyola Law School. What else do you do with the BA in political science? But I find a couple of interesting things. During this period, first Mike is described as passionate about UCLA football and basketball. Passionate. In fact, some say fanatic. Some say fanatic, Mike. There is a clue there, I think, and we come back to that in a second. Also, while at Loyola, he met this girl, Patty was her name, and they fell in love. They got married after dating a while. A very wise move, Mike. They had a daughter, very good thing for Molly. Over 30 years together, a UCLA fanatic and a wife who went to USC. Now that's special. But again, that doesn't explain why Mike is so special. In 1974, Mike joined the Attorney General's office where he learned his trade as being a tough prosecutor. In 1982, Michael came to national prominence along with the other AG by the name of Roger Bourne, now presiding Justice Bourne, when, as Jacqueline just mentioned, they began the trial of Angelo Bono, who with his partner Kenneth Bianchi were dubbed by the press the Hillside Stranglers. The longest trial in U.S. history at the time. After 2 years of trial, more than 1,000 exhibits and 250 witnesses, and a stellar lawyering like the cross-examination of Veronica that I told you about, and 11 days of closing argument by Justice Roger Bourne, they obtained a conviction. In 1985, only a short time after that trial, Mike was appointed to the municipal court. So this hard-charging prosecutor comes to the bench. He was not the first such prosecutor, nor will he be the last such prosecutor appointed to the court. He had just come off a long and difficult trial before Ron George, a tough, demanding judge. Mike knew the law, he knew how a court should operate, and he was strict. To quote Mike, when a lawyer came in and wanted to fight, I was ready for the fight. Let's go. But I think the defense lawyers were just trying to test this new judge, and what they found out was he was tough. Monster Nash? No. The monsters were the people he had just convicted. In 1989, Mike was elevated to the Superior Court, and he transferred to Van Nuys. The defense lawyers in Van Nuys said they were pleasantly surprised when shortly after arriving, Judge Nash rejected a defense motion, but reversed his own ruling the next morning. They were seeing a tough judge who was concerned about making the right call, and a judge that had the guts to admit that he had made a mistake. If you ask Mike, he will say that he was mellowing with time. I say, don't you believe that for a second. He's still ready for a fight. When he thinks someone or some system is not doing the right thing, he has no fear of controversy. That is special. But I think there's more. In 1989, he joined the Superior Court. That was a historic year for Los Angeles. For when Mike was elevated to the Superior Court, he asked to go to juvenile court. When asked why, because that was not a popular assignment. He said when he was a prosecutor, even though winning the case brought him a certain satisfaction, it didn't leave him with a good feeling inside because of the tragedy for everybody involved. So when he was elevated, he opted for juvenile court as a place to make a positive difference in the lives of people. This was a glimpse into what makes Mike Nash so special, so truly special. He asked for delinquency and he got assigned to dependency. Strange powers were at work. Mike had no prior experience in dependency, was not expecting this, but he came to dependency and he never left. And he indeed has made a positive difference. a difference in thousands and thousands of lives. Retired Judge Terry Friedman calls Mike the John Wooden of the Children's Court, the ultimate compliment to a UCLA fanatic. In his tenure as the longest-serving presiding judge of the juvenile court in Los Angeles court history, Mike has changed the world for young people brought before the court or in the system, both here in Los Angeles and across the nation. He created drug courts and mental health courts for juveniles. He developed badly needed psychotropic medication protocols for juvenile youths. He created Adoption Saturday, inviting judges from all over Los Angeles, including Chief Justice Ron George, to come down to the Children's Court to complete adoption proceedings on Saturdays. Over 10,000 foster children have benefited from this program, and it was a model for the nation, now used in all 50 states. He has opened up dependency proceedings to the public and written letters to the Times, quoting Mike, "The brighter the spotlight on the system, the better. The system sorely needs that spotlight. Our children need it, and our families need it." He has given his time to the California Commission on Children in Foster Care, the Judicial Council's Juvenile and Family Advisory Committee, and most recently as president of the National Council of Juvenile and Family Court Judges. So you want to know what makes Michael special? It's his passion. I think you mentioned that, Jackie. Passion is defined as having strong emotions, strong feelings, but its synonyms include ardent, fervent, heated, emotional, spirited, energetic, frenzied, consuming. As I look at Mike, he's all that and more. And he applies that to his work. While some people merely see work as a labor, others like Mike see it as a part of who they are. What makes Mike special is his love of people, his love of children and families, his passion about his work. This passion, this way of looking at the world is not new, so I'm going to close with one story. So in 1977, this tough prosecutor who was in the AG's office saw the Frank Capra movie, It's a Wonderful Life. And he cried. He was in fact so touched he wrote a letter to Frank Capra, which he has in his office, the response. And he said he admired the way he looked at life and always found a lot of good in people. Yes, Michael Nash is a passionate man, passionate about UCLA football, about justice, about doing the right thing, passionate about children and families. And his passion has compelled him to make this a better world. That is who he is. That is why he is so special. And that is why he so deserves this award for judicial excellence. Congratulations, Michael. It's now my privilege to introduce you to Judge Christina Snyder of the U.S. District Court for the Central District of California. Judge Snyder was nominated by President Bill Clinton and joined the District Court in 1997. A graduate of Stanford Law School in 1972, she practiced law in private practice until her appointment to the bench. Judge Snyder has a long connection to the Beverly Hills Bar Association, having served as a board member where she helped create Public Counsel, and which is now the nation's largest pro bono firm. Subsequently, she served on the board of directors, and eventually she became the first woman to serve as president of the Beverly Hills Bar Association. Judge Snyder has a distinguished career on the district court, and she continues that proud tradition of our very hardworking Central District Court judges. She received your Beverly Hills Bar Association Ronald M. George Award in 2013. Ladies and gentlemen, Judge Snyder.
As Judge Wesley indicated, the Beverly Hills Bar Association is very special to me. I did not serve as president, but I did serve as president of Public Counsel, and I want to talk a moment about the Bar Association's involvement in pro bono legal services. The Beverly Hills Bar Association is one of the largest bar associations in the country. As you've heard, it's just celebrated its 82nd anniversary. In 1977, I served on the board of directors of Public Counsel at a time when Public Counsel was an arm of the Beverly Hills Bar Association, devoting itself to impact litigation. The Beverly Hills Bar Association was the first in the nation to have an arm of lawyers involved in pro bono activity. In 1978, when the Los Angeles County Bar Association was seeking to establish a volunteer legal services program for attorneys practicing in private law firms, the Beverly Hills Bar Association and the Los Angeles County Bar Association joined forces to fund public counsel with dues paid by members of both bar associations. They transformed public counsel into a separate public interest law firm, which enabled attorneys from many prominent law firms in Los Angeles to serve as pro bono counsel for the poor. Today, public counsel is one of the largest public interest law firms in the United States, serving thousands of poor people in desperate need of legal assistance. So I say to each of you who is here tonight, every one of you should be extremely proud of the accomplishments of this bar association. Last year, I was privileged to receive the Beverly Hills Bar Association prestigious Ronald M. George Award for Judicial Excellence. It was a distinct honor to receive an award from the Beverly Hills Bar Association, given my long association with it. But even more, it was a great honor to receive an award that has been presented to such legal luminaries as Chief Justice Ronald M. George and Justice Norman Epstein. And tonight it is my great privilege to present this prestigious award to Judge Michael Nash. I'm not going to repeat all that you've heard. Obviously, he was a Deputy Attorney General. He handled the Hillside Strangler case. He absolutely was a force of nature in developing programs for delinquency and dependency courts, psychotropic medications, the adoption Saturdays, and he became a national role model. He made our court something that judges in every other state wanted to follow and emulate. And his achievements are really extraordinary, as you've heard already. So tonight you recognize Judge Nash for judicial excellence. The Ronald M. George Award for Judicial Excellence recognizes an outstanding member of the judiciary whose work and career have significantly improved the administration of justice and raised the standards of integrity of the judiciary throughout the state. The award honors a judicial officer who leaves a legacy of accomplishments, innovation, and success with an indelible long-term impact. And as you can see from the words of his colleagues, his friends, that Judge Nash exemplifies those very qualities. And I am thrilled this evening to present the Ronald M. George Award for Judicial Excellence to Judge Michael Nash, the presiding judge of the Juvenile Division of the Superior Court.
I think it was about 31 years ago. I've said this before. I stood before the jury in the Hillside Strangler trial that you heard about. We'd been in trial for over 2 years, and now it was time for closing argument. I did the opening closing argument in that case, and I said, you know, after 2 years of trial, 2 years plus, I'm not sure I know where to begin. And then I went and talked for about 7 days. So relax. No, just kidding. This is truly a memorable evening, memorable in so many different ways. I do really appreciate this recognition by the Beverly Hills Bar Association. I was awestruck and shocked when I got the phone call, and I still am today. I'm thrilled that so many of my good friends, law school classmates, and others have turned out tonight. And I'm especially glad that my wife and daughter are here tonight to hear these words. But I still know that when we get home, I have to walk the dog and take out the trash. Now, I really appreciate the words of Judge Wesley and Commissioner Lewis. I almost sound like a colorful character. I'm really quite boring. And while both of these folks are dear friends and colleagues, they're really more significant to me for other reasons. Judge Wesley represents the latest, and actually now the last, in a long line of Superior Court presiding judges who have given me this unique privilege of serving in a leadership position in the juvenile court, I think longer than anyone else ever has. It began with Judge Gary Klausner, now federal Judge Gary Klausner, in 1995, and has continued to this day. I have often said that they all kept recycling me in the hopes that I would eventually get it right. Nevertheless, I can honestly say I never took the job for granted, and I will be eternally grateful to Judge Wesley and his predecessors for entrusting me with their confidence for so long. I must also say it is a particular privilege working with Judge Wesley, who began his Superior Court judicial career in the juvenile court until he was wrestled away from me, and I mean wrestled, by then presiding Judge Bob Parkin. Judge Parkin said, "I've got bigger and better things in mind for Judge Wesley," and I rest my case. Let me also note that I'm appreciative of the fact that our next presiding judge, Judge Carolyn Kuhl, is also here tonight with her husband, and our colleague, Judge Bill Heiberger, who's a judicial powerhouse in his own right, and who, by the way, started his judicial career working for me in the dependency court. Now, Commissioner Lewis, she's another story altogether. Besides being one of my dearest friends, she represents the many incredibly hardworking and dedicated judicial officers who have devoted so much of their judicial careers to helping children and families in the juvenile court. Over the years, I say unequivocally, I have received way too much credit for their hard work, and I appreciate my colleagues that are here tonight. And it is fair to say I would not be here tonight but for the efforts of Commissioner Lewis and our other colleagues. Commissioner Lewis also represents something else about which I, in particular, am most proud. Over the years, I've had the opportunity to jumpstart the judicial careers of many great people by hiring them as referees in the juvenile court. Our juvenile and superior court today is populated by many of these folks who have parlayed that hiring into commissionerships and judge positions. In the last 7 or 8 years, I am particularly proud to say that 3 of them, including Commissioner Lewis, have been named California Juvenile Court Judge of the Year by the Juvenile Court Judges of California. Now, Commissioner Lewis is widely recognized as a legal scholar in dependency court. She is widely recognized as one of the best juvenile court judicial officers in the state and has developed a national reputation for her work in family violence, for which she has been honored here in Los Angeles County. She is simply a great judicial officer, and I hope that all of you will think about supporting her in the upcoming judicial elections in which she is currently a candidate. But first and foremost to me, She is a great friend that I love dearly. Now, when I was first contacted by the Beverly Hills Bar Association, I was quite surprised, to say the least. And the first thing I said, well, why me? And I think it was Jonathan Stein who said that when they began considering candidates, he said, it was weird. Your name kept coming up. And I thought, yeah, I guess it is weird. And then he said that the award was named for Chief Justice Ron George. At that point, I said, say no more, because I would pay you to give me that award. I said, you're obviously aware of my background with the chief, and when he said no, it made this that much more sweeter for me. When I joined the State Attorney General's office in 1974, I, like many other new deputies, heard about this office legend named Ron George, who was then a Muni Court judge, and who had argued while he was in the Attorney General's office multiple cases before the United States Supreme Court and the California Supreme Court, including the Sirhan case. Little did I know that some 7 years later I would be appearing before him with my colleague, as you heard, Appellate Court Justice Roger Boren, to try the notorious Hillside Strangler case, which I still think is the real 20th century trial of the century. For more than 2 years in trial and 2.5 years overall, I not only had the incredible experience of trying this horrible murder case, but I also had the opportunity to experience and learn from the man that I, to this day, consider the best trial court judge ever. Now, we don't have enough time to elaborate on that tonight. It really could be the subject of a judicial seminar. But if you think about every quality you can think of that goes into making a great judge, just put it in a bowl, mix it up, and bake it, and when it's done, it will come out with Ron George. Now, he obviously went on to bigger and better things and did it equally well. But when it comes to judging, for my money, and with all due respect to all of the great judges I have known, Ron George is the one who set the standard for the rest of us. Subsequent to that trial, then Superior Court Judge George swore me in when I was first appointed to the bench. And over the years, he has proven to be a great supporter of me as a juvenile court judge and a great supporter of the juvenile court. In a speech he gave in 2001 before the National Council of Juvenile and Family Court Judges, a great national organization that you heard I had the privilege of serving as president of last year, Chief Justice George made us all very proud when he said, quote, "Our children and families are our future. How we treat them says much about us as a society and will determine what our society looks like in the future. It is safe to say that no family truly wishes to find itself before the courts. After all, marital dissolution, child custody, child neglect, delinquency, and criminal conduct typically are the reasons that bring them there. What we do for these families in trouble, how we treat them, and the resources we can bring to bear to assist them can have profound consequences not only for each affected individual, but also for society as a whole." The chief not only talked the talk, but he walked the walk. As Chief Justice, he created the Administrative Office of the Courts, famous Center for Families, Children, and the Courts. He supported drug courts and domestic violence courts. He created the Blue Ribbon Commission on Children in Foster Care. He supported the creation of the California Child Welfare Council and more. He also supported the Adoption Saturday program when we created it here in Los Angeles by actually coming down and sitting and conducting adoption hearings for foster children. In fact, I like to tell the story that he came down to do one adoption, and I had a calendar of a bunch of adoptions, and he had so much fun that he hijacked my calendar and did them all, including agreeing to the adoption of the family dog in one case. That program is now a national program where every year, the week before Thanksgiving, courts in all 50 states open their doors and complete thousands of adoptions of children from foster care in this country. So for me, as a juvenile court judge, and one who has appeared before Ron George and who has been so profoundly impacted by him, to be standing here tonight accepting an award named for him, I'm not sure I even have the words to express what it means to me. You know, as juvenile court judges, we play a unique role in our court system. And it was best described by a good friend of mine and really a mentor of mine, retired Judge Len Edwards from Santa Clara County, when he said, "Judges in the juvenile court are charged with keeping children safe, mentoring families, finding permanency for children, and holding youth, families, and service providers accountable. Every day, hundreds of judges make thousands of decisions regarding children in crisis. We decide whether a child should be removed from parental care, whether a child has committed a delinquent act, whether a child should be committed to the state for correction, whether parental rights should be terminated, and similar issues. When parenting fails, when informal community responses are inadequate, our juvenile and family courts provide the state's official intervention in the most serious cases involving children and families. We are the equivalent to the emergency room in the medical profession. We intervene in crises and figure out the best response on a case-by-case, individualized basis. In addition, we have to get off the bench and work in the community. We have to convene child and family serving agencies, schools, and the community around the problems facing our most vulnerable and troubled children. We have to ask these agencies and the community to work together to support our efforts so that the orders we make on the bench can be fulfilled. We have to be the champions of collaboration. And to this, let me add another notion. As juvenile court judges, we have to have a certain attitude. And for me, that attitude was best expressed in something that Dr. Martin Luther King said, and I quote, "As long as there is poverty in the world, I can never be rich, even if I have $1 billion. As long as diseases are rampant and millions of people in this world cannot expect to live more than 28 or 30 years, I can never be totally healthy, even if I just got a good checkup at the Mayo Clinic. I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. This is the way our world is made." We juvenile court judges have to approach our job this way. As long as there are children without safe, healthy, loving, permanent homes, we cannot rest. Los Angeles is often praised for reducing our foster care population by half or more. That's nice. But we still have more than 28,000 children in our system, the largest in the United States. As long as there are youth who need guidance to become healthy citizens in our community, as long as parents and children need to be protected from domestic violence, we cannot rest. By honoring me tonight, the Beverly Hills Bar Association has shown that it recognizes the important and crucial work that we do in the juvenile courts on behalf of children and families in need. And for that, I cannot thank you enough.
Lovely and inspiring speech. Very well deserved. We come now to the second part of the evening, and we start with Bruce Borlett. Bruce Borlett, I've known him a long time, and Bruce is a lawyer's lawyer. He's handled very big business cases for a very long time in very different subject matter areas. $45 million verdict in a legal malpractice case is still California's largest. The $3.3 billion tobacco settlement was on behalf of Los Angeles County. And he continues to win a host of victories in entertainment contract disputes and product liability cases. Bruce has been named Litigator of the Year by the Century City Bar, Trial Lawyer of the Year by the Consumer Attorneys and served as president of the Consumer Attorneys of LA and California, both. Bruce has been one of the top 10 Southern California super lawyers for 11 years running. He is a fellow at the International Academy of Trial Lawyers, the American College of Trial Lawyers, the International Society of Barristers, and the American Board of Trial Advocates. Please welcome one of our champions, Bruce Bartlett.
Far better it is to dare mighty deeds, though sometimes checkered with failure, than to live in that gray twilight populated by those poor souls who know neither victory nor defeat. Teddy Roosevelt, likely thinking of Brown Green. It should surprise none of you that for these past 37 years, behind his desk on the credenza, those words, framed, to ever remind Brown Green of who he is and what we are all about. Several weeks ago, the Los Angeles Trial Lawyers Association, now the Consumer Attorneys of Los Angeles, I keep getting it wrong, had its annual dinner and presented its Trial Lawyer of the Year award to a young lawyer who had just had a string of great victories. That young lawyer took the podium in receiving that award and looked around at the crowd of 900 lawyers and spouses and friends at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel and told the story of the day that he had reached out and made a phone call to the man that he considered to be the Babe Ruth, the Mickey Mantle of trial lawyers. He picked up the phone and dialed Brown Green. Much to his surprise, not only did Brown immediately take the call from this young lawyer who was essentially unknown at the time, but invited him to have lunch with Brown and spent a couple of hours with this young lawyer giving thoughts and advice and just generally talking about what a great thing it is to be a trial lawyer. And that's the stamp that Brown Green leaves on our community. There are many great trial lawyers with tremendous track records, but there is only one, Brown Green. There's a great Buddhist saying that says, a true leader is happy for the success of those who come after them. Wow, think about that. Think about all the jealousies about the young people that are coming up and shoving you out of the way and taking credit for things that they do. None of that with Brown. Early on, his philosophy, right from the beginning, was to lift all the lawyers up, whether they were with our firm or somewhere else, and to cheer and to praise and to be the wind beneath their wings. How many of you here have had that praise from Brown that caused you to achieve more than really you probably rightly should? He's been the wind beneath the wings of so many over the years. Lawyers, friends, and countless clients whose lives would have been enormously different if they had not crossed paths with Brown. And forgiveness. Oh my God. I wish I had the capacity to forgive people's transgressions the way Brown does. Sometimes I marvel at his ability to forgive people who have wronged him, and when you're at the top of the profession, people are going to take shots at you that are unjustified, and he forgives them one and all, because as he said many times, holding that grudge only hurts you, not the other person. And that's why he remains so phenomenally young, and why he is still trying cases and loving it, and why he is still so effective. You know, Brown has never had a bad day in trial. Just ask him. I remember years ago, I was in trial down the hall, and we had a break, and I came down the hall and sat in Brown's courtroom and watched his witness getting destroyed, mutilated. It was a horrible day. Brown gets back to the office. Man, we just had a great day today. There is an Armenian saying that, roughly translated into English, describes Brown as well as anyone I can think of. When the alligators are snapping at his heels, he thinks it's the birds singing to him. We've been together for many years. Tim and Brown and I go back 37 years. And that tells you something. Because don't you think that the foundation of every relationship is trust? Every relationship, from marriage moving forward, trust. Brown and Tim and I, for all these years, and our newer partners, our more recent partners, I'm not going to name all the names, but you all are here, and all the other lawyers in the firm as well that are growing and climbing up the ladder, we all trust each other. And that's what keeps it together. And it all starts with Brown. You know, I've heard a lot about fighting for the little guy tonight. Brown has always fought for the little guy. I also heard a comment about It's a Wonderful Life. There's a scene toward the end of that movie where George Bailey has figured out that what he's looking at is what the world would have been like without him. And he comes running out of the house that had been the house that he and his wife and his kids had lived in, but it was just this ramshackle place that never had the glow of love in it because George Bailey had not been there to marry his wife and have the kids and do all the things. And George is looking up and down the street, and the angel says, "Strange, isn't it, George? We all touch people's lives in ways that we never even imagine." Well, Brown, you have touched so many lives. You have made such a difference in so many lives. And one of the best things that ever happened in my life was becoming friends and partners with you. If any of you decided to pick up the telephone and call Brown's number, here's how the message would go. Hi, this is Brown Green. I hope you're having as great a day as I am. That's how it goes. I'm sure some of you here have called and heard that message. Right, Barry? I hope you're having as great a day as I am. And then he leaves the information about how to call back, and then he ends with, have a great day and a great life. Brown, it is a wonderful life, and you are so deserving of this recognition. Congratulations. And now I have the unenviable task of introducing, of all the introductions I've ever done, it is so difficult to introduce somebody who needs no introduction like this man. You talk about somebody who has made a difference in people's lives, who saved the county of Los Angeles from what would have been bankruptcy. But the thing that I remember is back in about 1976, before I ever knew Zev, hearing on the radio somewhere back then about this city councilman who on a very cold day had gone down to City Hall, pulled out his keys, and opened up City Hall for the homeless to come in and spend the night. Wow. This is not a politician. This is a statesman. Our wonderful dear friend and somebody who we've loved for many years and has made a difference in all of our lives, Zev Yaroslavsky.
Thank you, Bruce. When you called me on behalf of Brown and asked me to be here tonight, you didn't tell me I'd have to follow you. So I felt like doing what they do in Congress and say I associate myself entirely with the remarks of the previous speaker and just sit down. First of all, before I say a few short words about Brown, let me congratulate my friend Michael Nash, with whom I've worked off and on during the course of my being on the Board of Supervisors and his being at the courts, the juvenile courts, for an incredible career, and talk about making a difference, especially for children and children's lives. We couldn't have asked for a more passionate and compassionate member of the judiciary and advocate for kids than Michael Nash. Congratulations on your award. And I won't tell you what the UCLA Cal score is right now. I don't remember when I met Brown Green for the first time. It may have been on one of our biennial trips to South Bend, Indiana, where I root for anybody in blue and gold. And Brown roots for the Cardinal in gold. It may have been at a function of trial lawyers, but the first time I met him, I am certain that his stature, literally and figuratively, made an impact on me. He is, like Abraham Lincoln, a tall individual. He is, like Abraham Lincoln, a person with great judgment, integrity, and pragmatism. He knows when to hold them and he knows when to fold them. And like Abraham Lincoln, he has made an incredible impact, not only for his clients or on his clients, but on the many people who, because of his work, never had to become a client because of the corrective actions that were taken because of the work he did in the courtroom. That's what called him to my attention when the County of Los Angeles, some years ago, when the tobacco companies had been sued by a number of governments around the country, including the state of California, but the County of Los Angeles hadn't filed a lawsuit and we were eligible to do so. And we looked for a lawyer, a group of lawyers, who would share our passion and we knew would go into the case with great urgency and passion on behalf of our county. And they did. And as a result of their work for us, the County of Los Angeles won a settlement amounting to approximately $2 billion, for which we have been getting a little over $100 million a year, and we will get that over a period of 20 years, which enabled us to reinvest those dollars back into a health system which would treat people in our county largely those without insurance, those who could not afford it, those who were on the margins of our society, but who were clients of ours in the county health system, to be able to treat them for diseases that they had contracted because of their addiction to tobacco, whether it was lung cancer or emphysema or any number of other maladies which were related to tobacco. So when you talk about fighting for the little guy or fighting for the marginalized people in our society, I don't think there's a case, I don't know all of your cases, I don't think there's a case that more reflects the impact of what a trial lawyer, and I still do call them trial lawyers, Bruce, what a trial lawyer does and what he can do to impact our society than what was done in that particular case against the tobacco industry. Because there was no more insidious corporate citizen in our country that did more contemptuous things in promoting their corporate interests at the expense of our public health than that industry. But they weren't the only ones. They were the biggest ones, but they weren't the only ones. And so when Brown walks into a courtroom and has a client, could be from A to Z, in a case that involves product liability, health malpractice, whatever the case may be, when he walks into that courtroom, he's not only fighting on behalf of his client, he's fighting on behalf of all of those people who, because of his victory in that courtroom, may never have to become his client. So I've always been guided by a quote which I think is appropriate not just for public officials, but I think it should apply to every single one of us. It was a quote from Lord Thomas Macaulay, who was a 19th century British historian, and actually was a member of the British Parliament for a short period of time, who said as follows: "No man is fit to govern great societies who hesitates about disobliging the few who have access to him, for the many he will never see." Now, Brown Green has been about the people we as a society never see. The marginalized, the people who can't get adequate representation in a conventional sense. They couldn't pay a lawyer's fee if their life depended on it, but they need representation. People who are victims of corporate greed, people who are victims of negligence, the people we never see. That's what Brown Green has been all about. And so, Brown, I salute you as the recipient of this award, but to be quite honest, I think your reward should be, in looking back at a career and a body of work which is second to none, and the impact you have had on so many people, people you will never know and you will never see, that is also second to none. I salute you. I'm proud to call you a friend and a colleague and a constituent, no less. And you have, on occasion, called me for constituent issues, which I really appreciate very much. You really suffer out there on Pacific Coast Highway, Brown. It's tough. It's tough on the beach, I know. But seriously, you are one great American in the image and spirit of Abraham Lincoln, who you so revere. You have made a great difference. I have brought with me, and I'm not going to ask you to come out, I'll just give it to you later, but I want to tell everyone here, as I did for Mike, brought you a plaque from the County of Los Angeles, and it won the support of all 5 members of the Board of Supervisors, which was remarkable, because I can't get 2 votes these days. The closer I get to my retirement, the harder it gets. But this comes with the love and admiration and respect from all of us. Congratulations, Brown Green. Now, It's my pleasure to introduce someone who I've known all of my adult life, but only half of his adult life. That's a joke. One of the great lawyers in our community, and I've been a client of his, as I've been a client of so many lawyers over the years. You know, I once had this quick digression. When Ramona Ripston of the ACLU retired, and they had a big shindig for her, and every federal judge in town was there, and all the Superior Court judges and appellate court judges were there, and I was asked to say a few words. And I introduced myself as Zev Yaroslavsky, otherwise known as the defendant. So, Marshall Grossman has been a friend of mine since I was in college. A great community leader and a great lawyer. And it's my pleasure to introduce him at this time. Marshall Grossman.
Thank you, Zev. It's with a great sense of history that I'm pleased to be here this evening on behalf of Brown Green and his family. I started practicing law a few blocks from here in January of 1965, about 10 years ago. And Judge Nash asked when he was called, why me? Well, Brown Green knew why it was Brown Green, because I insisted that the person who followed me at this position be several years older than I am. And Brown easily qualified. So I'm grateful that he accepted this award, this recognition, which is given both for trial advocacy and commitment to the community. And Brown exemplifies this description and is as deserving as any person I know of this recognition this evening. There is a commonality which you have heard this evening about both Brown Green and Judge Nash, and that is a commitment to children. A commitment to those who have no ability to advocate for themselves, but who trust others to do that for them. A year ago, I sat at this table with my 9-year-old granddaughter, and I see a beautiful young family here, as proud of their father as my family was a year ago. And I salute you for being smart enough and wise enough to being taken into a family as beautiful, as vigorous, and as giving as this family is. And you have a wonderful role model. Relish the evening, relish the life. It is a good life. And I look out over this group, and I see so many of my peers and so many judges before whom I have been pleased and fortunate enough to appear, because you have taught me much of what I have learned about being a lawyer and being a public citizen. And I single out Zev Yaroslavsky. I remember when I wrote the first check, $50. He has never let me forget it by telling me that I need to do more. I need to do better. And I have experienced appearing before him on behalf of a client and having him vote against me. I have never forgotten that. I will never vote for him for supervisor again. And Norman Epstein, his lovely wife Ann, it was my privilege to try 3 cases back to back before Norman Epstein, just before he went to the Court of Appeal. And I will tell you that I have never learned more from any judge than I have learned from Norman Epstein. And I will thank him for the rest of my life for what he has taught me. You've heard a little bit about the law firm that Brown and others formed and still have together. Not too much is said about Brown in his civilian life. And he sent me an email, and it started out by saying, please don't talk about my career. I'm a human being. Talk about my life. Well, I'll share a life experience with you about Brown Green, who you've probably never seen. I was in Phoenix, Arizona about 6 months ago, and I went into the lobby of the hotel, and I saw this big, lanky guy walking across the lobby with a tie-dyed T-shirt and some god-awful, she's giggling because you know it's your dad, and these god-awful looking shorts. And he walks up to me, and I thought to myself, how the hell do I know this guy? And then I put a suit and tie on him and a bow tie, and I said, my God, you look like Brown Green, but down on your luck. That was Brown Green. He gives his life not just to his family and to his profession, but to children, as a big brother, as a teacher, as a mentor. So he and Judge Nash have formed the perfect complement for this evening's recognition. I've had some marvelous experiences with his law firm, one of which I will share with you tonight, because as you know, there is rumored to be a recession that we're coming out of. The legal profession is rumored to be down on its luck, low profits, lower profit revenues, bad relationships with clients, clients negotiating lower fees. I have an example to share with you that will prove that that is not true. A partner of Brown's, who I promised would go unnamed this evening, but whose name begins with the word Mark. He and I have been negotiating for the last 3 months on a settlement between our respective clients. I won't tell you who the plaintiff is. I won't tell you who the defendant is. I'm not going to embarrass him either in that respect, except to say I do represent the defendant. It's a $40,000 settlement. This is the largest single result achieved by that firm thus far this year. And I think Mark deserves some recognition of this at compensation time. Now I want to tell you one final story about the one time I was adverse to Brown. I'm sure he remembers it because when he left the room, I felt like roadkill. I was representing a law firm, defending them in a professional liability suit. And we had a mediation before Judge Trotter. And the client asked me, I know what they said, the client, experienced trial lawyer himself, said that I know what's going to happen here, but you think I should be in for any surprises because it's Brown Green. I said, no, don't worry about the guy. He puts on his pants one leg at a time, just like everybody else. There's not going to be any surprises. Trotter's in control here. We'll get through this and we'll hopefully get rid of the case. So in walks Brown Green, not with another lawyer, but with a video camera and a video machine, whatever it was in those days. And we start out, he says, Your Honor, I would like to play a tape. And I said, Your Honor, I don't know what films he's watching, but I have no interest in them. Judge Trotter said, let's watch the tape. He puts on a trial demonstration of what my client's going to look like at trial, including a deposition, mock of course, of a retired LA Superior Court judge. And by the time he finished, all my client wanted to do was get the heck out of there and find out how much money he wanted and write the check. So this is a guy who gets results. And I liked the product so much that I ended up buying it. Because when I had a claim against an insurance company on a loss, I was fortunate enough to be represented by his law firm and by the same Mark Quigley, who got a phenomenal result for me, and his pay was phenomenal. It was a bottle of Opus One. So this is a law firm that I can strongly endorse, provided that it's the same rate structure which has been applied to me. Brown, you have been a shining example for me as a much younger lawyer. I admire what you have accomplished in the courtroom and in the community. I so respect the love and adoration that my dear friend Bruce and others in your firm have shown for you. Those thanks, those feelings, those emotions do not come easily. They do not come naturally. They need to be earned. You have earned them in spades. I congratulate you. I wish you a wonderful life.
Well, Marshall, you can pick up the tab now for the whole room of that $40,000 settlement. This is Tiffany, for those of you who are wondering. Class all the way. And on this it says excellence in advocacy. And right at this moment, all of my law professors at George Washington University from long ago are rolling their eyes in their coffins, remembering me as the indifferent bottom of his class. True. Guy. I'm not the kind of guy that O'Melveny admires or whoever would be in line to hire. And so on a night like this, what can one say? I'm blown away, humbled. I come from Washington, D.C., born and raised downtown. And I think about the pathways of my life, lending here tonight. And it's wonderful. I mean, we all have those pathways that we can look to. In my case, my dad and mom, wonderful people who had a hard time rubbing two nickels together. My dad died driving a taxi cab in Washington for the Diamond Cab Company. My mom was a government clerk in the FHA, retired after 35 years, bored out of her mind, working for the government. And I had several great breaks that led my pathways. When I was 16, I had the opportunity to work in Congress. I was a Capitol page. That was during the McCarthy years, 1953, 1954. John F. Kennedy, LBJ, Tip O'Neill, Sam Rayburn, the greats, they were all there. And I was there seeing this happen. And one day, I had a bet with one of the pages about what the backgrounds of these very successful politicians would be. And we looked up in the congressional directory, and 57% of the congressmen had legal educations. Wow. Now, today, I think it's something like 20%. It's changed enormously. People going into politics, this quintessential wonderful thing that determines our fates, politics, we all have to be involved with. My dad, humble, third grade education, had the right kind of values as my mom did. He may not have had a lot of money, but they had values, and those values came down big time to all four of us. My dad worshiped lawyers. My dad was in a Methodist church Bible class, and some of his best friends were judges, federal judges. And one year he was the president. Yes. I think of him a lot. He used to come home from his cab and tell me about taking lawyers to the United States Supreme Court, dropping them off. Message. So how did I get to go to law school? How did all that happen? I got to law school, got through, but I had to go in the military. Greatest break of my life is I went into JAG. I was a JAG officer. They sent me to France. 1961. The Berlin crisis is on. I lived with a French family. I learned French. I got exposed to a different culture. I represented GIs. We had a base of 5,000 GIs on this little small base up in northeastern France. And one day, I represented a staff sergeant named Ken Chambers. He was being boarded out of the Air Force with 2 months to go for a 20-year career where he would get a pension for he and his family with 4 kids. He came into me and said, "Oh, Lieutenant Green, I've got no hope. And suddenly, it clicked in. I was a messenger of hope. That's what we are. And so we fought the Air Force, the police, the whole thing. They had a case against him. He had done some indiscretions and some bad moves, but he didn't deserve to lose his career and a pension for the rest of his life with his family. So I got a hold of this, and I got into it, and I got witnesses, and we tried the case, and we won by 2-1. The board voted in our favor. I remember my boss, who was the staff judge advocate, looking at me and said, well, Brown, are you happy that you kept that guy in the Air Force? Well, I was a 3-year career. And I came out, and I had married. I married a wonderful woman, Eva, my Armenian warrior, who was with me, supported me, gave us a son, Aaron, a loving son. She led me across country after we came back from Washington in a borrowed car. We took Route 66 here in 1965. And we enjoyed all those things, and she taught me how to tie bow ties, among many things. She helped enormously in my career. She stands with me here tonight. Where else did the pathways lead? I had an uncle who also was a cab driver, George. My dad was Diamond Cab number 478, and George, my uncle, was 479. And he loved the horses. My Uncle George is one of the most wonderful Irish. I come from a long line of Irish people. And he used to look at me and say, Brownie, give up this law school thing. You got to learn to get a system to play the ponies. That's where it's going to go. George, I'm glad I didn't take your advice. Look at this tonight. With friends, noted judges, Jimmy Cato sitting here, my ex-partner, Richard Voorhees and I, and Jimmy Cato. Voorhees, Cato, and Green. 1973, January 1st. We started out with a few cases and hopes and dreams. And then it just kind of went from there. And we had wonderful people join us, and we had wonderful causes. And those pathways led in such distinct ways, and all the way through to today. And, you know, speaking of Lincoln, yes, I do revere Lincoln. Lincoln, when he became president, with the Civil War looming, said something that people haven't really remembered much out of all the stuff about Lincoln. But he said, my fellow citizens, we must remember that behind the clouds, the sun still shines. It's a message of positivism. It's always stuck with me. Yeah, you have your bad days, you lose a case. I've learned and used and lost many. And I have to get up the next day and face resilience and such. That's another wonderful thing about this profession, how it teaches you the reality of life and growing up. And I'm still doing that. And so I think about the whole aspect of giving. Bruce mentioned George Bailey. We don't know how we affect people. A theologian in the 1600s wrote, no man is an island, no one goes his way alone. That which we put into the lives of others comes back into our own. I think of the people in this room who've given so much to others and to me. To our firm, Sherry Dempsey, my wonderful secretary, 23 years. Boy, has she ever covered me. I think of a wonderful family of 3 generations that have worked in our firm. Tony Rapisarda's husband, Frank. Tony passed away roughly 5 years ago. Tony was with our firm for I don't know how long. It seemed like forever. She had a daughter, Tina, who became my secretary, was my secretary, brought up in the firm, who then had a beautiful daughter, Serena. And those two ladies who worked 12 hours a day, 7 to 7 for years in our firm, had a daughter who lived to go to law school at Hastings. And one day came and she became a lawyer in our office. Now imagine how Bruce and Tim and I, with pride, and speaking of two great people, Tim Wheeler, who saved our firm and saw its vision and captured it and moved it in the right direction. And of course, Bruce. All of this was all part of the work that was done in so many ways that made us all look good, including myself. And you have Frank Rapisarda and the daughter and the granddaughter here. And then she, Serena, the granddaughter, married one of our lawyers and left to go to another firm. Rob, I'll never forgive you for that. Another thing, our clients. In this room is Mike Burke. Mike's the individual, the client, who's in a wheelchair. Mike was a lawyer in San Diego, and about 4 years ago he went out one morning when it was raining to get in his car to go to the office, and a palm tree uprooted that weighed about 4 tons, owned by the city of San Diego, and it crushed him in the low back, crushed his legs, and he's never been able to walk since. I got a call on that case, and I remember so vividly going to San Diego and seeing you, Mike, in a woebegone rehab hospital. It was his 16th surgery. And what was he doing? He didn't complain to me. He was doing pro bono work, helping nurses and people in this little hospital do free legal service. Talk about giving. It was such a pleasure to represent you. And in that case, we unearthed the fact that the city of San Diego, owning 80,000 palm trees on all of the right-of-ways, walked away from their responsibility to save money instead of taking care of the trees they owned. And that had come down on top of Mike Burke. But because Mike stood up, that case got in the media, and they now are doing inspections. And good things are happening. Perhaps safety will be enhanced. So these are the kinds of things I remember. And the other people who have given to me, Liana, these wonderful kids. Please stand up if you would. They've all seen you, but do it. Come on, stand up. Liana, Violet, 14 years old, Blue, 11 years old, and Teal, my big guy, age 6. Now, that gets me to the real message. The real message is tomorrow, not tonight. It's not yesterday. The future's ahead of us, not behind us. What do I want to do? I'll work in this profession. I'll be trying cases until they cart me away. I love it. I've got 3 jury trials looking me in the face out over the next 6 months. I'm excited at that. I haven't tried enough cases. And, for those of you out there and all of the people, Marshall mentioned the fact that, the legal profession has got its problems and people are thinking this and that. Yeah, there's a lot of controversy about that. But the truth is, whenever there is a controversy, there's going to be the need for a real great lawyer. There's going to be a need for someone with courage and guts and foresight to stand up and do the right thing. And we have a lot of them here in this room. And there will be young people coming up. And we have a duty to be role models for these people, to mentor them, as many of us do. I think of my own life, the people that mentored me and helped me out, that I can't get around to mentioning. But my real mentors now, Liana and the kids, Aaron, they give me direction. It's nothing like a wife to hold that string of the kite, right? As you're up in the air, keep you down to reality. That's what she does. So, I look at the future and I see nothing but promise. When I grew up in Washington, it was a segregated, racist society. Now, this is the nation's capital. I'm talking downtown. I was born 3 blocks from the White House. I was raised in a small house within walking distance of the White House. I never went to school with a black person. They were all segregated. Brown versus Board of Education came down, and I was a senior in high school. but I was on Capitol Hill in a private school in the Library of Congress. When I went to law school in Washington, at George Washington University, we had 300 students as freshmen and 8 women. 8. They were the brightest people in the class. Now, people talk about the good old days. Were those the good old days? I don't think so. I think the future's ahead. When I think of what the air was like when I came out here in the mid-'60s with the pollution, you couldn't even see downtown. I look out today, we've got a pretty good view where we are in our office. Clear. Fabulous. What's happened to air? Cleaner water. Promise for minorities. Gay rights, all of these things. The opening of rights in the greatest democracy in the world is this country here. And we are the hope for the future. This country is the hope. That's why people want to come here, and that's why people want to stay here. And that's why people go in the military, and that's why we all serve as lawyers. We're all officers of the court. The greatest court system is this county and this state. And so, I just look, and I just want to give you all a great message of thanks. My cup overfloweth. I am the luckiest guy in the world. And here I am tonight enjoying all this with all of you. And that's right there. And tomorrow I'll be back, and the day after that until no longer. Thank you, and good evening.
Oh, wonderful speech. Young, forward-looking. Thank you for coming. Please take home a copy of tomorrow's Daily Journal. It recaps tonight's dinner. We'll all see you at the 5th Annual next year. Please drive safely. Good night, all.